just a small group here, we can kind of get started and kind of take a look at what we got going on here.
Okay, well, I'll update the attendee list.
There we go. It'll be a short attendee list. But you know, the main thing on this this architecture working group, it necessarily isn't a like a working group to kind of solve, you know, real technical issues. It's more along the lines, what I found is to get what we're doing out to the community, make it available to other folks so they can kind of take a look at what we're doing. And when people want to learn more about like blockchain, for example, that they could come and look to see what we're doing, and then kind of get involved and get hooked into the community and dive in as a contributor. So that's kind of the goal of the architecture working group. And one of the things I found on the other open source projects I've been involved in is the working groups for like the architecture. You'll be surprised on what will pop up for other technologies and other ideas that are floating out there that you just don't know about, just because the open source community is just so huge. So that's kind of the thought process I have around this working group. So I kind of listed out some of the technologies that I know of that we're kind of working with, and just to kind of get a high level of, you know, what is that technology and why we're using it type of scenario.
Okay, that sounds good.
So the first one is so from my understand, Rust has a libp2p implementation, and that is being used for peer-to-peer networking. So what if either of you can give some more background on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the brief background on libp2p is basically that is the underlying technology that IPFS is using, and it has a good solid community. They have good performance metrics around it. They have a good implementation in Golang and I think in JavaScript as well. So there are multiple implementations which people are referring to and using, and that's why we picked libp2p and we are taking the Rust route. So we are just using the Rust implementation of that. But there is like proven data around that and how people are using it, and there are current contributions on that. And we did ping, like we found a vulnerability and we pinged them and they got back to us. So they're active, they're responding. So it is a good community to embrace.
And what part of the Pyrsia implementation is actually utilizing the libp2p? Like what's the use case that we're trying to solve with the libp2p?
Yeah, so basically that is the peer-to-peer infrastructure that we'll use to make everything decentralized, so that we don't depend on the on the centralized internet. So it has the discovery protocols, it has the gossip protocols to share information across the peer-to-peer, across the peers. It also has tuning where you can broadcast to, you know, your nearest whatever, and then you can extend the broadcast. So it has all the good things that you expect out of a solid peer-to-peer implementation.
Nice.
So this will serve kind of the backbone of the decentralized network.
So this is really our like you said, the backbone of of how we communicate across the Pyrsia network.
Yeah, and just for context, we chose this over using the entire IPFS implementation because we also need storage. But the constructs that we are storing are a little bit different than just files. And that's why we started with the peer-to-peer layer, and then we'll start from looking at what are the other things we can borrow or learn from. But we know from experience that the structures that we are trying to store are different than just file systems, and the lookup and all of that has to be engineered to be efficient.
Right. So we looked at the, what was it, the IP or IF?
IPFS, the IPFS. So yeah, I can put a link in there so that people know that we are talking about the same IPFS that everyone else is talking about.
Yeah, if you could just highlight that. And
yeah, I'll do that.
the full stack from there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Any other things we want to just kind of highlight on libp2p?
I think that is basically the gist, and we have started on an implementation, so we are learning by experimenting. That's all. Yeah, by building something on top. This P2P also, I put a link.
Yeah, one of the things I found with the open source meetings, the more folks that you have kind of talking, if one person's talking, another person's kind of taking the notes in the doc. It kind of works out well if everybody's kind of a little active participants in the doc. It just makes the meetings run smoother. So blockchain. So which is there a specific blockchain implementation that we're kind of being based off? Was it, I know we found a lot of information from, what was it, the Ethereum?
Yeah, Ethereum, yeah.
Ethereum has a bunch of information about how they implemented, what they found, what they saw wrong with the initial, what was it, the Bitcoin implementation?
Bitcoin implementation, yeah. Yeah. And even when after the first Ethereum implementation had issues, it was forked and it is much more stable, and they have made some decisions which make it more resilient to attacks or availability attacks.
Right.
And so we are choosing to go down that path, and one of the main applications is to provide a verifiable transparency log of how things are built and served on Pyrsia.
So is it like a transaction log that we're a verifiable transaction log, or?
I don't know whether it's a transaction log, because we don't care about how many people download things and all of that, but we care about how things get committed and submitted to the system.
So how would you kind of put a term around that? A verifiable.
We have called it transparency, or what is called provenance log. And we have used this term back and forth, but we haven't yet found the term that fits best. But the point is being able to, so making it possible to verify the security and origin of the particular binary, particular package or binary, right?
Right. Now on the now from my understanding of our use of the blockchain is we're not going to be actually storing the binary or the package in the blockchain, but we're going to be storing pointers on how to verify what you're using through the blockchain.
Yes, that is indeed correct. Because if we store the binaries or any any semblance of the binaries, the blockchain gets too big, too fast.
Right.
And I'm using the term package and binary interchangeably because
Yeah.
when we said binary, it confused number of people. So we are like, okay, if package makes sense to you, let's use that word.
Yeah, we'll run into that, especially when you talk about, in some language it's a module, another language it's a package, another language it's a library. It's like nice. And also, from my understanding, in the blockchain, we are also storing, one of the things that's different with our implementation of the blockchain is that we need to actually store identity in the blockchain.
Right. Mm. So this will also contain,
Go ahead.
Public keys to enable verification of identities.
So that kind of leads us right into the identity process.
Yeah.
And the identity right now is based on public-private keys.
Correct. Yes.
And also there was some look at GitHub as an identity source. Is that true as well?
So we are thinking of initially that GitHub could be an identity source instead of reinventing the wheel, and that majority of open source development happens on GitHub, and GitHub already does a decent job, which everybody understands. How it works, right? Meaning they know how to upload their keys, how to sign packages, all of that, they know.
Cool. Let me fix that. All right, now the next one is anything else on
I think
identity?
It might help to mention that we are also exploring using Notary to use the identities and sign and create signatures. So this is where it goes, right? We have to first have a proven way of building or using identities. Once we have those identities and we have some repository that guarantees that, which is GitHub in our case, we need to now use those identities to create signatures that sign the packages that are being generated. And that gap is, we think that Notary 2 will be able to help with that gap of signing and how.
And has anything been, a lot of the when we go and create these packages and binaries, they're usually being done by like a CI/CD process. Have we thought about how those distributed, it's not a person doing it, a person submits the commit over to the CI process. In our case, down the road, it'll eventually be a Pyrsia build node. But how are we kind of doing that once removed type of signing?
That's an excellent question. And when I say that, that means that we haven't yet understood that problem well to be able to provide a solution. So that is something that we are looking for community to contribute, at least add some thoughts, and then we can come up with a basic implementation. So this is an open question. I mean, we have some ideas, but they are not enough to get us to a good implementation yet. So John, is John joined the call? Hey, John, thank you for your comment.
Hey.
So the answer to that is we are going to start with something that we know. And so we'll start with GitHub. But if you do have ideas around how we could include GitLab in that, we are welcoming those ideas. We don't have enough expertise on hand with GitLab, but if you are somebody who knows that, please help us understand that terrain.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you can have different methods for identity. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Zero Trust Supply Chain document from SigStore's repo, but it's worth checking out their philosophy on keys. Basically, all keys are going to be compromised. So
Yeah.
you should have like ephemeral keys, and then you say this key is valid for this between these two timestamps, and you put that on a recorded ledger, and they have records. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of similarities with SigStore's objectives.
Yes, there are. Yeah.
Systems.
So when we researched Pyrsia, we did look at some of the SigStore stuff, and yeah, there are a lot of parallels. So thanks for bringing that up, and thanks for the pointer.
Yeah. I think
we don't mean to be exclusive to GitHub. We just want to have a starting point. Like, okay, we said, okay, let's start with GitHub. We know enough about it, and we can probably find material, and then we can expand it to other identity stores. I have a link for the SigStore stuff, Steve. I'll add that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then for IPFS, like storing on IPFS, I think is simple, and then I don't know what the blockchain stuff is about, but like you can, upload, you can use IPFS almost like an OCI compliant repository and store on that. And to kind of get an example, there's a project called NFT storage, making it really easy to just like upload things to IPFS and get like a gateway, Web 2.0 accessible link, let's say.
Awesome.
to that artifact.
And
so
is that, would that be the I'll get it, NFT storage? Would that be part of the peer-to-peer networking, or would it be part of the BitTorrent serving up, binaries and packages part?
So you can I would just use IPFS, which is like a it's like peer-to-peer infrastructure, right? And then you use that platform to service your artifact needs, like your repository needs. Like, what's a repository need to do? It needs to store something. It needs to verify that the thing it's stored is like maintains its integrity, which is what IPFS is like. Integrity-based addressing. Checksum is your address. And then the storage of it is basically on these IPFS nodes, and it's like an incentivized peer-to-peer like network to host these nodes and have other people store that content. You can encrypt before you store, so then nobody can really see what you're up to.
Oh, interesting.
And, so, well, I mean, that's how you keep things like private on the blockchain. But yeah, because it's public, anything you post is public unless you encrypt it with some other key.
Nice.
Yeah, you might not want all of your binaries accessible to everybody.
Well, part of the idea that part of the beauty of the Pyrsia network is the blockchain and the peer-to-peer networking are used to create a consensus network in which, in order to provide trust around a particular binary, that we need to have so many nodes in the network actually have a consensus that this is good to go. So as part of that process,
I see. Yeah.
before we actually like publish it for good or sign off on it, we get this consensus from each one of the build nodes through the blockchain.
Yeah. Also, John, one of the so we want the binaries to be available to for anyone who wants to download it, because it's like you're downloading a Ruby gem or a Java jar, right? But what we want to be really, really careful about, and that's where the consensus mechanism comes in place, is how that binary is submitted to the network. We have to guarantee that it came through whatever secure means as we define it, and that is more important than how it is consumed. For anyone who wants to use it, they can just go ahead and use it. We really want to be careful about how it is submitted to the network.
And I don't know where I kind of put your statement there, if that would be part of the blockchain or identity, or that's just like kind of like an overall goal, I guess.
There's I'm gonna link another thing here. It's the Bitcoin release process. I don't really know where to put it. I'll put it here.
Yeah.
Bitcoin release process. It's really cool because they do the similar thing, but they do it manual. So it sounds like you all want to automate that process, but like they release they build a deterministic binary on like individual build systems, or like Bitcoin core maintainer build systems. They each have their own setup, and then they use like this geeks build machine. They produce a binary, they sign off on the binary, they upload the binary and the signature. Everybody makes sure it comes to the same hash, and then after like some basic consensus is approved or is reached, then that becomes like the official release artifact for Bitcoin Core. So it sounds like but right now it's somewhat manual in the sense that like but it's cool.
Yeah, it's very the process seems very similar to what we're trying to achieve in an automated fashion. Typically these meetings, I keep them to a half hour, but if you have time to run over, that would be great. We just got a couple minutes here, and the last one kind of for today that I had on the list was BitTorrent. Right now that we know that the IPFS has the ability, because it's based on a file system, that it had a network file sharing. Sahinder, could you kind of let us know what the reason why we're kind of looking at BitTorrent right now?
Yeah. So right now we want a mechanism that that allows us to allow the users download large packages really fast, right? And BitTorrent seems to have done this, as we have experienced right. And there is a quick implementation that we found, which works on Rust, which allows us to just drop it in and start using it. So that will be used to demonstrate that there is such a capability that we can offer. Now, the question about whether that is the most efficient thing to do, is that the best in the long term? That is still under debate, and we know the few issues that come with running a BitTorrent node on every single Pyrsia node, and the kind of resources and all the other infrastructure it will demand. But we are just going to start with this, show that there is a way to solve this problem, and then figure out what other alternatives we can work with. We are working towards a good end-to-end demo sometime in the first quarter of this year. So we said, okay, we'll just pick something, work with it, see how that works, and then figure out what is a good long-term strategy.
What was the name of that client? Is it Synapse?
Synapse, correct. And I'll put the link to that Synapse as well. Yeah.
So that was
it.
Yeah. So that's on And part of that is because there's a Rust client, we could kind of hook together the Synapse Rust client into the Pyrsia node. Relatively simple. It's not a huge lift on that front. Now, like we were saying, is IPFS the long-term solution? The questions out, that's out still outstanding question.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where we're at. Oh, was there any other technologies that we're currently getting into or diving into? I know under identity, we were getting into certain hashing schemas, one versus another, but just in general, any other packages that we're really leveraging at this point?
No, I think this covers the majority of them, and I also put Rust Lang at the top so that we make sure that that is something that people are aware. We are talking everything Rust here, but let's make sure that So and we started working with this given some of the literature that we read, and also the kind of places we want to be able to deploy Pyrsia, and want to make sure that it also works with limited resource availability. So we thought Rust Lang was a good enough good candidate to do that, and we are aware that there are some areas where there is room for innovation. So that was another exciting reason why we picked Rust Lang, and that's why we are doing everything you see here. I think that covers the majority of like the big blocks, and then as we go through these meetings, we'll probably dissect each of them and see if we have a reason to change direction and all of that.
Yeah, I think the next kind of action item is to dive into each one of these and really look at the use cases versus
what our experience has been, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And John, thank you for adding all this. I mean, this is
apologies
exactly
for
how we
jumping
need
in
help.
late. I had another meeting, but like I added that zero trust supply chain stock from
nice, thanks.
Dan Lawrence, the 6-4 person, and Chain Guard folks. So I found it really insightful, and I think you guys might align with the architecture kind of insight of his reasoning and his logic for how he arrived at the conclusions in that doc, So cool. Glad I could see what's happening. I saw the new calendar invite, and I was like, what is Pyrsia? So
awesome. Also, we are still doing the growing pains dance, and we are putting more and more stuff in the OpenSSF calendars. We have been doing stand-ups and all that good stuff, but we are transferring that over to OpenSSF. So you will see more invites on the Pyrsia calendar. And if you are willing to join, I can add you to the Google groups so that you can get more insight into how we are working.
I think I just requested it earlier this morning. So
I think I saw you come through and added you in, so you're able to get the notes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm here at Coinbase, so I'm really interested in supply chain tech, and I have a lot of exposure to blockchain tech. So consider me an asset if you like have questions or want to give yeah, to see how this project develops. And
Yeah, because like my expertise is on the build side and how everything gets compiled and packaged together. So it's going to be a great meeting of the minds to kind of pull all the pieces together to make zero trust really happen.
Yeah.
cool.
And I think in the long term, we're going to solve a lot of issues that are out there. Not anybody's fault, on purpose, just that open source projects end up pushing security to the side and they just want to get things out the door and working. So the more we can help them out and provide a network for them to have things built on and be trustworthy is going to help the whole world. So it's very exciting. Well, we've gone over a few minutes. Just a couple other kind of upcoming meetings. Same time on Friday is the outreach meeting. And if you're interested in the, John, if you're interested in the stand-ups for the daily coding, what's happening under the covers, let Sahindra know and he'll get you added to the invites as well.
Yeah, I'm still gonna catch up on the tech, I guess, before I figure out how much technical investment I can do. I mean, I have other projects I'm working on.
Sure.
No worries.
I'm one a lot with YubiKey automation because it's such a pain to do setup, commit, signing and stuff for the masses. But yeah, I'll try and just first educate myself around the project and then maybe commit to more time. But thanks for the heads up and telling me about that.
And the big thing is, just listening in on what's happening and providing, the ideas and insights that you have of other projects and other things that are happening out there in the world is a big plus.
Cargo Crev is probably a low-key project you all haven't heard of, but it's in Rust. It's basically, trying to solve this problem, but just using Git, which I kind of like. So I manage my passwords with Password Store, which is a basic shell wrapper for GPG, and it stores all my passwords encrypted with GPG key in a GitHub repo, and that's kind of what Pass does as my password manager. And when I couple that with my YubiKey, anyways, imagine that, but for dependency reviews. You have a Git repo full of dependency reviews. You sign off with some type of key saying I reviewed these dependencies, and then you push that up, and then you import other people's reviews as Git submodules, people you trust.
Right.
So right now the UX is super clunky, but I think it's a good experiment, and like it's still fairly community based. There's some people trying to use it, but yeah, definitely worth checking out because it's been around for a few years, and also has like the same motivations behind it and intents for the project. So
awesome. We'll definitely take a look at at what you suggested, and just keep the thinking cap on about what we're trying to do. And if you have anything else that just drop us a link. There is a Slack channel off of the OpenSSF. It'll be Pyrsia _bootstrap. If you want to join that and just listen in on what's happening.
Cool. All right. Hey, nice to meet you all. And
all right,
yeah, I got to sign off too. So
all right, take it easy. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.